Hi folks, this is Tony for A Minute to Midnight. I've had a few things on my heart, been a bit heavy-hearted over so much of what I'm seeing at the moment globally going on and in New Zealand. And last night I was thinking about it, and the scripture, the story of Lot came into my mind. Remember Luke chapter 17, 21 to 28, Jesus said, "Likewise, as it was also in the days of Lot, they ate, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. But on the day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even so it will be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed." Okay, so what about the story of Lot? How does it tie in today? Let's go and have a look at a few aspects of it, starting in Genesis 19, verse 1. Now the two angels came to Sodom, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them and bowed himself with his face to the ground. So take note, Lot was actually in Sodom, the wicked place, and he was sitting in the gate of Sodom. In other words, he was in some sort of leadership role in Sodom. And in verse 12 and 13 it says, "Then the men said to Lot, 'Have you anyone else here, sons-in-law, your sons, your daughters, and whomever you have in the city, take them out of this place, for we will destroy this place, because the outcry against them has grown great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it.'" So what I was thinking last night is, Lot had a choice. Lot was in Sodom by choice. And the angels told him to get out. They gave him the warning to get out. Now Sodom and Gomorrah were obviously very wicked places, but Lot had somewhere else he could go. He could get out of those wicked cities. And so the angels led him out. In 24 and 25 it says, "Then the Lord rained brimstone and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. So he overthrew the cities, all the plain, all the inhabitants of the cities, and what grew on the ground." And if we look down in verse 29, "And it came to pass when God destroyed the cities of the plain, that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot had dwelt." But here's what gets me, and I have to say this is probably what got me feeling a little bit discouraged last night as I was thinking about it and looking at world events going on. Yes, we are seeing the world becoming increasingly more and more like Sodom and Gomorrah and like the days before the flood with the wickedness and so on. But the difference is Lot chose to be in Sodom. But it's becoming increasingly difficult in today's end-time world, and it's only going to get worse, where there's just nowhere to go. There are no safe countries, no countries where you can go, there's a righteous country we can escape to or whatever. Certainly there are some cities and places that are worse than others, but the reality is the whole world is being engulfed in a liberal agenda as we get closer and closer to the New World Order and the beast system becoming more and more prevalent. So now let's just look at a few things that I mean, and I could choose a whole heap more than this. This is just a very quick overview of some of the things that I'm talking about. Well, first off, there are the shootings, the mass shootings, which always have, let's just say, aspects of the official narrative that don't add up. There's, of course, the ones that have just happened too within a few hours of each other. One in Dayton, Ohio, and the other in El Paso, Texas. The gunman in the El Paso, Texas massacre was supposedly a right-wing extremist and posted a manifesto, and his name was Patrick Crusius, and he somehow supposedly managed to kill 20 people and injure 26 more with an AK-47 style gun. That's like at least 56 shots from what appears to be a single 30-shot magazine. And some eyewitnesses claimed that there were multiple shooters, but you don't hear that, gets disappeared. There's a lot of other aspects of that, well, I have to say, are dodgy. I won't go into it any further. Whereas you don't hear, on the other hand, that Connor Betts, the shooter in Dayton, Ohio, was a self-described leftist who voted or would be happy to vote for Democrats and praised Satan and was upset about Donald Trump having won the elections in 2016. So Connor Betts was not a right-wing extremist, he was a left-wing extremist who wanted socialism. And the first cry, of course, is always, and particularly from those with leftist leanings, is always gun control. We need more gun control. But they don't ever mention the links to psychiatric drugs or the fact that these people play violent video games. Why is there never a cry to get rid of violent video games? No, that's ignored. And of course you'll never hear the mainstream media talk about potential links to MKUltra and mind control. But without going into details, the father of Patrick Crusius is John Brian Crusius, and he is involved in something called Infused Being Therapy in Dallas and specializes in trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder. He's a counselor. With just a small amount of research, you also find another name associated with that Timberlawn facility, and that is Dr. Colin A. Ross, who has written extensively on MKUltra and some would say has some dodgy things in his own closet. It all does leave me with, well, let's just say suspicions of MKUltra type involvement in these shootings. And here is another example of how we are being railroaded into a world that is very pretty much anti-Christian and anti-Christian morality. And this one is specifically New Zealand based, and it deals with abortion and law reform in New Zealand. The government has announced abortion reform, a bill that's just been put forward here in New Zealand. Abortion will be removed from the Crimes Act and treated as a health issue in a law reform. The government has announced abortion will be accessible without a statutory test for the first 20 weeks of pregnancy. The government is establishing a special select committee to ensure the move isn't hijacked by opponents, and the bill will have its first reading on August the 8th. Personally, I find this incredibly, let me say, discouraging to see this happening in New Zealand, and Family First New Zealand also is shocked. Under the current law, an unborn child is at least afforded some recognition and minimal legal protection. In contrast, these proposals will give the unborn child the same status as an appendix, tonsil or gallbladder, simply tissue removed as part of a health procedure. The proposed policy means that unborn children under 20 weeks gestation are no longer protected in any way at all. It is simply an agreement between the mother and the abortion provider. This is quite shocking. The proposed law would also make late-term abortions considerably more accessible rather than for exceptional circumstances as currently required under the Crimes Act. A baby could be aborted after 20 weeks as long as the health practitioner who intends to perform the abortion considers that the abortion was appropriate in the circumstance. Thank you, Family First New Zealand, for being one of the few voices that's actually speaking up on this issue, unlike most of the so-called Christian churches in New Zealand, which are too pathetic to even address it, when we should be speaking out and saying something on this. And as far as the government goes, well, they just make me sick, and the opposition parties are no better because they're probably, by and large, going to all support this with maybe a few exceptions. Here's a great quote from the late Derek Prince. How strange that people who are active in the fight against racial prejudice and injustice, and rightly so, actually condone and promote the practice of abortion. Strange, too, that people who would never think of raising a hand in violence against a small child feel no compassion towards an even smaller child in its mother's womb. Somehow the substitution of the word fetus for infant dulls people's consciences, yet the change in terminology in no way affects the real nature of such an act. Someone has asked, what hope is left for a society in which mothers kill their own babies? God's attitude towards abortion is not affected by a change in terminology. He classifies it quite simply as murder, and deals with it accordingly. In nation after nation around the world today, millions of lives are being blighted by the curse that follows this act. Besides this, we are being bombarded constantly with the transgender agenda, transgenderism, transhumanism. We have censorship of Christians on YouTube and Facebook and other social media platforms. We've got bombardment of pornography and sex from every direction, which is just about impossible to escape from. We have race baiting and racial tensions being pushed by extremists on both ends of that spectrum, and I don't believe there's any place for that within Christianity. And on the other end of that spectrum, we have watered down, lukewarm churches trying to bring us all into some sort of unified one world religion. And there are so many other things that I could mention, but I'm going to stop there. But folks, you've got to realize that as Christians, we are going to face persecution and it's going to increase. We are not going to be liked by the world for our stand on things, true Christians anyway. The false, lukewarm ones will be fine, they'll just assimilate. But if we want to be true, Bible-believing, God-fearing and Christ-loving Christians, we're going to have to stand up underneath the persecution that we are going to see coming against us. And it's not going to be easy. So I guess, folks, the challenge for us now really is we're going to have to fix our eyes on Jesus more than ever. And the best way to do that is to actually study the Word for yourself, read the Bible, and allow God to speak to you through His Word. So, folks, since we can't escape from the world, we need to somehow detach ourselves from the world, and that isn't always easy. But Jesus said, "These things I've spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you'll have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." That's Matthew 16:33, New King James Version. And I want to leave you with another little quote from the late Derek Prince. A faith that does not result in activity of any kind is a dead faith. It is empty, worthless, insincere. Folks, don't forget to visit our website, aminutetomidnight.com, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel and iTunes channel. But above all, let's make sure we don't lose our fire and our passion and our faith.